Wait, I'd like to call the meeting to order, and I would ask Alderman Davis if she'd be so kind as to do the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
If there are no objections, I would like to make this invocation something from the words from the book of Psalms, Psalm 51. Let us pray. Create in us a clean heart, O Lord, and renew in us a right spirit. Amen.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye, please. Aye. Any opposed? It's unanimous. Thank you. As Dorothy Dutton moves up to educate us on this book here, I'm going to, are you doing this as well? Oh, it's a tag team. Okay. I want to thank everybody for coming to this workshop. This is an off time to do it, and we welcome all of you here. And after we get done with the presentation, there'll be an opportunity for anybody to ask questions, and we'll give you as many answers as we have, and we'll take the information in. We'll have notes that we're going to take on the information that you give us, so that we can go back and look at it all and figure out what our path forward will be. Ladies?
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the board. Today, Dory and I are going to be walking through the existing encroachments and enforcement tools that the city has and has been using prior to the public comment and input. And as you're aware, there are right-of-way encroachments are very predominant throughout the city, especially in the historic core and in the non-conforming R10 lots. In the last year, permitting and enforcement has only allowed the following: new driveways and walkways to access property, parking for non-conforming lots, overflow parking if necessary, and those would only be allowed to be graveled. So to start, what is a right-of-way? A right-of-way is the property located within and adjoining the streets, roads, and highways within the city, which rights-of-ways are owned by the city or state or otherwise maintained by the city or the state. A right-of-way may be in improved or unimproved state. So our current ordinances state that any encroachment into any of the city of rights-of-way are a violation. The language exactly says that it shall be unlawful for any person to place or cause to be placed on any public street, road, alley, sidewalk, or other public right-of-way within the city any wall, fence, gate, brick, stone, wood, rock, vegetation, or other structure, material, or substance above the horizontal plane of the existing ground. Some examples around the city of structures above the horizontal plane include landscaping, fencing, decorated pavers and edgers to delineate parking, and yard art. Further, the ordinance states that in addition, it shall be unlawful for any person to take any action whatsoever within any public right-of-way which creates a hazardous condition or safety hazard, or which otherwise interferes with or obstructs in any manner the passage of persons or vehicles upon or within said rights-of-way, or which obstructs, interferes, or hinders lawful parking within any public right-of-way. So I'm going to be focusing today, for the rest of the presentation, my portion, on the landscaping and parking encroachments that we have. So we have residents in Southport who have spent lots of money and time and sweat to landscape their yards or right-of-ways. And there are others that want to do the same. They enjoy the landscaping. They enjoy having the trees and the shrubs and things, the character that comes with having these things. So right now, currently, staff are not allowing any new landscaping in any of the right-of-way areas. So that would be including the driveway. So some of these examples we have here, this is an example of some driveway or right-of-way landscaping on the left here. Very nice. And if you didn't know the right-of-way existed there, you wouldn't know any difference that it wasn't part of their yard. And then on the right, we have some tree lawn planting. So there's some ferns that have been put in a tree lawn along the street here on the other side of the sidewalk. These examples are some other landscape examples you'll see. On the left, it looks like they're planting the yard. Now this very well may be, some of it may be on their property, but depending on the size of the right-of-way and when the house was built, when the surveys were taken, some of the front yards are actually part of the right-of-way. So what looks like and feels like the yard that is on the property side of the sidewalk sometimes is actually in the right-of-way. And then the picture on the right, you'll see, this is a property owner who has added some landscaping to use as screening around some of the utility poles and utilities in the right-of-way that they have there. So moving on, so those are just some of our examples of the landscape. So we're talking about some parking. So what about parking? We know that parking is allowed for parcels that have non-conforming R10 lots. So if your lot is less than 10,000 square feet, you are not required to have a parking on your site. So parking is going to be in the right-of-way off the street. So, but there are other properties that also would like to have some extra overflow parking. So as you can see on this bottom one, there's a driveway and they've added a parking pad for some overflow with gravel and some wood borders around it. On the right-hand side, there's in the forefront of this picture of the photograph, there is a gravel parking pad that is bordered with some brick. And then further behind it is a fully bricked parking pad. And so this kind of is what we're asking is, what kind of improvements do we want to have in here? So is it improved? Is it pervious? Is it impervious? How far do we want to take this? So some other examples throughout the city. On the left here, this is an example of a street that these are all 33-foot lots. They cannot have, or they almost physically cannot have parking on, and they are not required to have parking on site. So all of their parking is in front. So you've got several different types of parking in these examples. There's concrete pads, there's gravel pads, there's just concrete strips for the tires to park on along that. And then we will see throughout the city many times where there's a gravel parking in front of a structure or a business, especially in the business district, where it is technically parking in the right-of-way, but there's some bumpers that people will have out in the front of the business. And then we also have the right-of-way parking, public parking areas, which per the ordinance is lawful parking in the right-of-way is one of the main purposes of the right-of-way for the use by the public for parking. So in a lot of these areas, it's been gravelled, cleared, so that parking can be used by the public property owners within the area. So this is just a brief overview of some of the things we've seen around the city. So some of the ideas, thoughts, these are two of the main, landscaping and parking are two of the issues that people want. They like the landscaping and they need the parking. So that's kind of what we're focusing on this time. So I'm going to turn it over to Dory now so she can review some of the options and considerations that were brought up from some other past meetings.
Good evening. So city alleyways are also considered the public right-of-way. We actually have it on our agenda for the March 4th meeting at 9 o'clock to discuss the alleyways. I'll be doing a little presentation about what was found when our code enforcement officer went out to investigate those. Most of them are so varied as far as the density that's there, the width, what he can actually see, but we have pictures to show you on the 4th as well. This is one alleyway that was cleared and is used to access the back of the property. So there are a lot of considerations and options, and I'm sure, of course, the board's heard them all before, but there is the option to not enforce the right-of-way at all. Let people do what they're going to do up to the property lines or to the roads. There's also an option to allow the existing rights-of-way encroachments to stay, but there can be no new encroachments. There have been calls from new property owners in Southport who also want to landscape their properties, and we've had to tell them they're not allowed to. We could allow vegetative encroachments to stay, but anything above ground that's non-vegetative would have to be removed. We could allow public parking in the rights-of-way, but it cannot be designated for specific property owners in the residential or the business district. And then regardless of the path forward, if public services needs to access any of the underground lines, then the city is not held liable to put it back. That's kind of the presentation for tonight, but we're happy to take questions if you have any, and I have the sign-in sheet to call for public comment.
Well, why don't we start with the comments from the board? Are there any comments from the board? Okay. I'm sure there'll be comments when we come back to, so if you have the sign-up sheet, if you would.
I'll just call from up here. Miss Susan Delaney?
If you'd go up to the podium to talk so we can hear you and the people at home can hear you, if you please state your name and your address.
My name is Susan Delaney, and I live at 304 West Street. I'm going to speak from the heart tonight, so bear with me if it is not completely coherent. But we bought our property at West Street 11 years ago. We have been living here full-time for 8 years. Our property is in the historic district, and like most properties in the historic district, most of the land surrounding our home is right-of-way. We have a very small yard. When we built our house, we were told that we could landscape the property, we could landscape the right-of-way, but if the city needed to tear it out, that they would tear it out. Actually, they told us they'd give us some warning, and we could take it out, or they would take it out, and that we could replace it at our own cost. And we were good with that. That was fine. And that's what we did. We put a lot of money into landscaping around our house. It is very beautiful, and people come and take photos in our house, and it is worth everything we put into it. The other thing we did at the time is we buried the power lines. We paid to do that around our house, knowing that that would be coming and to try to prevent some digging, that might occur. We also replaced all the sidewalk from the entire length of our property as well, so it was level and flat, people would not have tripping hazards. So we invested a lot in this property, and we are not the only ones. Many of our neighbors are here. People have spent lots of money and time and effort to beautify the property. And they do this because we love this town. We love this town, they love this town. And the reason this town is what it is because of the people and what they do for it. When we bought our property, down one side of our property were dead pecan trees, and down the other side was scrub grass that was filled with bags that were floating along and beer cans and things like that. That doesn't happen anymore. People do throw beer cans in our yard, but we pick them up every day, every night. We maintain that property, and so do our neighbors. And therefore, we have a beautiful town. It's more than just the beauty of it as well. Since we have been living there, more families are moving in. Across the street from us, we have people with grandchildren that play in the yard. Next door to us, a couple is moving in any day now, the next month, with 2 lovely kids, one of which is big enough to run but not old enough to understand that West Street is all but an interstate highway. Ever since Short Street was turned around and people have to go all the way down to the marina, the speed that people come down that road is unbelievable. We have a dog. That dog, if it ran out, would get run over in a heartbeat. The landscaping that we have in front of our property prevents, it's kind of a visual barrier that the dog knows not to run past it. And I know our neighbors want to do the same thing. They want to put some bushes, some landscaping to keep their child from opening the door and running out. We also have neighbors just down the street, people on the corner of Lake Caswell and Nash, that have a very beautiful brand new home that the entirety of their property is right away. And with all due respect to them, it looks horrible because they're not allowed to landscape it because they didn't move here 8 years ago. I'm here today to beg you to let the people of Southport improve the property. We know it's not ours, and we know you can tear it up. And I also ask that you let us put it back if it does get torn up. That's what keeps this city beautiful. We planted, by the way, also 2 live oak trees, big live oak trees, not the little tiny ones, on our property, in keeping with the spirit of Southport, because we want to have those trees grow over the road and be the lovely community that it is. So I don't even know why, I understand the UDO, I absolutely do. So I suggest we change it. So we're not having this conversation over and over and over again, and let the people take care of it, because the city, why? I mean, we don't want to spend the money to maintain it, and they're never going to care for it the way the people do. So that is my plea to you, please. It's not just about beauty, it is about, making this a place for families to live. Thank you.
I yet again forgot to make this statement at the beginning of this meeting. You'll notice that we will not necessarily engage you after you have your particular conversation. That's because it'll drag the meeting on, because we'll get back and forth for hours. However, during the question and answer period, I tend to think that most of the comments that have been made will be addressed in the meeting, not like for a vote, but you'll know that we actually heard you speaking, as opposed to looking at a blank face and thinking, I just got up there and said something and nobody paid attention to me. Okay? Ma'am, next one.
Angelo Collins.
Angelo Collins, live at 1107 North Caswell Avenue. Mayor and Aldermen, thank you so much for your time. It's funny, when they brought the pictures up, my house was on it. You couldn't see it, but what I'm here to talk about today is the alleyways. And I know it's a March 4th agenda. And really, I want to apologize. When I get done talking, I promised my wife we would do something tonight, but this was important too. So I chose y'all first over my wife, so you understand that I'm bolting out the door when I'm done. To follow up on what this lady said, I know her house personally because it's off of Caswell. It's absolutely beautiful. And when I bought my property, I bought my property 2 years ago. At the time, I asked about alleyways. It was approved, and I put a garage on the back of my house. Love Southport, been coming down here for 30 years. And that's the reason why I wanted to move here. I put the garage on my house because I knew the alleyway was approved. But also, being a good neighbor and moving down in this community, I was also working with the builder whose house was in one of those pictures, that when he got to his house, I wanted to work with him so we can make it nice. Now, when I moved in there was trash, drug paraphernalia, everything in those woods and the alleyways. Now, I asked the city, and it's funny, I spoke with Mo in her office because my permit got pulled. And the reason it got pulled is because they needed better clarification. And the only reason I found out it got pulled, we were going to start taking out the trees that were in the alleyway. And it's 2 gumball trees, which I consider those I call them garbage trees, so they drop those balls on the property. And there's a beautiful oak at the end of that alleyway that I'm trying to work with the first property owner to go around so we won't take it down because it is in the alleyway. And I try to be a good neighbor of Southport. Like she said, I took down 2 gumball trees in front of my property and put in a oak tree because I look forward to that oak growing. I won't be here to see it get as big as it will, but I also planted other trees. I did landscaping on the front. But the alleyway is important to me because I built a house with a garage I can't use. And I believe that, as a homeowner, I don't mind taking the expense and adding it in the way. Because the way I feel about it, if my house is on fire and the properties are so tight back in North Caswell, if a fire truck needed to go down the alleyway, I want them to go down the alleyway to save my house, and it's important to me, and it's my expense. The thing that's frustrating now is it's going to cost me to take those trees down because the builder was going to do it at no cost. And if you walk behind my property, he put part of the alleyway in there, and it's gravel, and I love what he did, and that's what I was going to do all the way to the street. But now he has an extra parking pad, and the alleyway, there's 3 trees in its way, and I want to take those out and, and be able to access behind my house. One, that when I have friends over, I can park behind my house and let them have my parking pad up front. And I don't want any cost to go to the city. I think, like the young lady said earlier, is if we want to beautify Southport and keep it the way it is, and we know the expenses and we know what we're getting into about right-of-ways, then let us. Because I know Southport's not going to allow us to put garbage in those areas and in the alleyways and stuff. But, I will be at the meeting on the 4th to talk more about my alleyway and, and see what can be done. It's important to me. I did get to clean the alleyway up with the builder and took a lot of that garbage out because that was important to me, because I'm going to have grandkids here pretty soon in another month, and I want them to be able to run in my yard and not have to worry about things. But Southport is a wonderful, beautiful community. I feel like what people have done, I ride around here all the time and done a great job. You can't change perfection. You can just make it look prettier. And I think, if you go by these houses and see what people have done, and the streets can't get any wider unless you go into people's front doors. Don't change that about Southport, please. And that's the reason I moved down here. I've been living here almost 2 years, and it's absolutely what I always thought it would be and more. I just want to get access to my garage. So thank y'all so much for your time. I'm gonna walk out the door and do my wife thing, and thank y'all so much. And
Go ahead.
Mr. Bob Holben.
I'm Bob Holben. I live at 114 West Moore Street. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, Board, City Manager. Appreciate you letting me talk. I have no dog in this fight. We do not encroach, but every house on our block does. So what do I think about that? I'm appreciative of what my neighbors have done. I think I understand the motivation behind some aldermen taking a hard stance against encroachments last year. I imagine that stance contributed to one of the aldermen losing his seat. Anyway, if you wish to guide the city's future for decades to come, it seems pretty clear to me that we are going to have a long-term parking issue. So I'll assume that's the original motivation. The points I'd like to make, though, are this. Individual property owners and the amazing things they do with these historic homes, the oak trees, and the landscaping additions, these play a significant role in creating the local charm that makes Southport so special. And these property owners clearly understand that it is city property and that they are responsible for removing items that are in the city's way. If the city plans a new sidewalk or a new parking spaces or wants to bury power or sewer lines, my goodness, go for it. That's good stuff. It's good for all of us. But to needlessly keep neighbors from beautifying the city on their own dime, that kind of mentality feels misguided to me. Barren rights of way are not charming. What they're doing to their yards is charming, and it's removable if need be for the right reason, but not simply just to take over and assume the right-of-way. I ask that we stop talking about staying below some horizontal plane. If someone wants to build a nice stone wall and the city needs to get under it, the property owner will need to pay to remove the wall. I'm here to ask the city to move forward with option 4 from the meeting a couple weeks ago on February 5th. There was a slide deck. In that slide deck, it was a little different than tonight. It basically said option 4 was allow existing or new encroachments until access is needed by the city, or if they have a cause, or if they cause a hazard. A property owner can put the landscaping or structure back at no expense to the city. That's a win-win deal in my book, and one that I believe won't even make anybody angry. I think the premise at the last meeting was no matter what we decide, it's going to make somebody angry. I'll listen. Maybe I'm missing something. I'm not sure how that makes anybody angry. One more thing. I just jotted some notes here while I was listening. The parking discussion at the beginning made me think of the block on Lord Street between Moore and Nash. On that block, those are neighbors around the corner from me. On that block, I think it's gravel from one end of Nash down to Moore on both sides. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. At least one side, maybe both sides, full gravel. The city never did that. Over the history of Southport, the neighbors built that entire block of gravel. And it looks like an organized city-created parking section. The city paid nothing. The neighbors did that. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me. See, there we go. Here's all your neighbors. The neighbors are doing a really good job of helping this city build itself, the local charm. You know, if there's violators putting something that's really awful looking, let's work on the historic commission and some kind of design guides, but to simply say we need to take over this space, I don't get it. I don't get it. Anyway, thank you for listening.
Mr. Fred Fiss.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak tonight. My name is Fred Fiss. I live at 216 North Atlantic Avenue. I've been a citizen of Southport for probably about 20 years. I am also a member of the City Planning Board. I'm here tonight speaking as a citizen. I support the city to enforce the right-of-way encroachments. Safety first is number one, and then to maintain its property rights, the property that belongs to the citizens of Southport. It's an insult to me to have citizens fence in the city right-of-way. There are examples around town where people have blatantly done that. Specifically, at 416 East Bay Street, probably back in 2018, there was a fence and stone boulders and heavy landscaping put in on the city right-of-way. To me, that's a hazard. A pedestrian walking along the street needs to step off the street. Well, if they do it there, they're going to trip over boulders and fall on a fence that's on the city right-of-way. In 2019, I formally filed a complaint with Code Enforcement Kate Marshall. It's ridiculous. Nothing was done. In 2021, I filed a complaint again. The area of land at that particular site that's fenced in, I happen to be a real estate broker too, that's probably a $500,000 piece of property that belongs to the citizens of Southport. That property could be used for additional parking at Kingsley Park. It could one day be a sidewalk. I understand if that owner wants to be like everyone else in non-conforming lots and put in a parking pad, they may need to do that. In the case of that property, He's configured it so that he can pull in and pull under the house. And that's smart thinking. But the fence needs to come down. Please enforce this violation. There are other examples like this that are just as ridiculous. At the corner of North Lord Street and West Moore, there's a brick and mortar impediment on city right-of-way. It's a raised planting bed. There is a fence on the city right-of-way. There's even a porch swing on the city right-of-way. It's an insult to me if it just stays like that. That shows weakness. So I look forward to more enforcement. I would like to say a couple of heartwarming notes. Along the city right-of-way in front of my house, which is across from the city gym, recently, for the first time since I've lived there in 12 years, Public Works came and removed the leaves. It's quite a large city right-of-way in front of my house, and it'd be a lot of work for me to rake all those leaves or to hire somebody to take care of it. So I was pleased. I was also pleased to see orange cones put up at the median on East-West Street and Atlantic Avenue adjacent to the city gym. Some cones were put there to discourage parking in the median on 300-year-old live oak trees. And that's ironic that that's even happening with the care and money we're trying to spend on the other 300-year-old trees in the vicinity of that area. So thank you for your time.
No one else signed up, sir.
I'm going to get to everybody. Everybody that is here to talk will have an opportunity to talk. So you'll have that opportunity. So if you didn't sign up and you plan to talk, could you just raise your hand so I have an idea of how many people that might be? All right, about a half a dozen. We'll just go from left to right. Sir, with the blue shirt?
Yeah, my name is Bob Gardner, 108 North Caswell, one of the pictures that was up there, dangerously close to that. We've been an owner since 2009, so about 15 years. You know, as I sit here and listen to this, and I see up here 1792. Since 1792, it isn't apparent that the people that sat in your chair that were managing the town thought that people using the space in front of their home as was needed. As an example, I have a fence that's before the sidewalk. So again, from our house to the sidewalk, there's a fence, and that's in the right-of-way. I'm in a non-conforming lot, but there are many people here with non-conforming lots. And people spend a lot of time and money and energy, as Susan described and Bob described and others did, to try to beautify the area. I struggle, I find it's struggling, rather than saying, we have this rule, we're tied to this rule. We're so rule-bound that that's all we're thinking about. Follow the rule, whatever it is. But for the last decades or more, none of that's been followed, and for good reason. That's the way the town looks the way it is now. As beautiful as it is, people, like my neighbors, and I include myself, spending irrigating, fertilizing, planting, but at the same time, fully understanding, as Bob said, was that at any point in time, if any work needs to be done in front of our property, absolutely. We'd be the first one to condone that and cooperate with it. I'm unaware of people not cooperating. Maybe you are, because you're in the city, or those before, some of you knew. I'm not aware that we always, yes, we're a growing town, we need parking. But much of the historic area has right of way between the curb and the sidewalk. I can't see anybody parking between the curb and my sidewalk, or on the other side, which is right against my house. It is not practical or possible to do that. That doesn't make sense. So I'd like to express that given the fact that the amount of, for decades and more, decades and decades, people have spent time and energy and money to beautify, all with the positive intention to improve the town and make it look charming and beautiful, that we both maintain, allow it to maintain as it is. Individually speak to homeowners if there's a problem and if we need access. The town needs access for any type of utilities. That's absolutely fine. So, and if, where there's I understand where there aren't curbs, that may need to be addressed, but address it where there's a parking issue. I mean, the city spends a lot of time and money, and they put trees, live oaks, which I greatly appreciate, throughout the town, but in the right-of-way also. I condone that, and I think it's a wonderful thing that we're doing. So I'm asking this board to be practical and not just to look at some, I don't know if it's an ordinance or a rule or a practice, but nothing has been followed for decades, and we have the town that we have, and to just try to wipe that clean, I think is a huge mistake. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Kathy Cabral, and I live at 308 West West Street, right next door to the Delaney's. We purchased our properties and built our homes at about the same time. We, too, made the investment of burying our power lines so that that would not be an issue. We, too, replaced our sidewalk at the same time, which the prior sidewalk was atrocious. It was a horrible, horrible trip hazard. There was a dead live oak in the right-of-way that we paid to have removed because the city would not do it. We replaced it with another live oak, not a 3-inch live oak, but an 8-inch live oak, which is absolutely, it's very mature at this point and looks beautiful. I echo the comments of a lot of the other speakers here that the plantings and the landscapings and the beautifications that have taken place in the right-of-ways enhances the beauty and the appeal of Southport. I don't believe that any citizen expects to be able to monetize the right-of-way in front of their homes. You're not going to build, they're not buildable. I think as long as nothing is a, quote, safety hazard or trip hazard, but if the owners are maintaining the space, and I live on West West, and the right-of-way further down West West is not maintained, I think you should continue to allow the owners of these properties to plant with the full knowledge that if the city needs to access that space, and as long as it's done safely, that should be able to be done. And if the city needs to access it, the city can access it, but the owners should have the opportunity to replant or re-establish what is in the right-of-way. Thank you very much.
From this section over here, could you raise your hands again so I could see who, with the maroon sweater on? Yes.
That's my sister-in-law. I want to make sure she. I would regret that. So my name is Hugh Fosbury. I live at 120 West Moore Street with my lovely bride Lisa, and so this is a really interesting topic, right? We heard about this. We've lived here. We bought our property in 2013, moved into it in 2014, and of course love it, and want what's best for the city, of course. Fully understand there could be a couple of outliers that do occur that, you know, kind of cause a problem. I would hope that we don't try to use a bulldozer where we could use a little small shovel to fix a problem. I think the idea of, that's been said several times, so I'll be brief, I promise, to let, we all acknowledge it's not our property. We got that, we know. We acknowledge that if something has to be done, absolutely get it done. And we know that the city's not going to replace it the way it was. That's fine. If it's going to be replaced, we'll do it at our expense. Fully understand all that. And it's the right way to do it. But I don't think we should tear out what's there or limit improvements in the future for that purpose. That just doesn't make sense to me. I can tell you we have done some work. We're at the corner of Moore and Lord, West Moore and Lord Street, and we have a driveway and plenty of parking, but there's a lot of cars would park on the side of the property there. And our friends would park there, and we'd see other people, and it was just dirt, just not much grass, just dirt. And when it would rain, the cars parked there, the wheels, you'd see the side of the cars just splattered with mud. And so we invested money and we had gravel put down. It's not for us, but we just thought it looked better. Up the street at Robert Rourke Inn, they already had gravel. I thought that looks really nice. Let's try to use something similar so there's consistency. And then before you know it, the entire street had done the same thing. So now it looks pretty nice. We don't own the property. It's used by whoever wants to visit the town, and it's wonderful. So, but now they don't have to worry about getting their car messed up and step into mud puddles when they're coming in and out of their car. So just an example. When we bought the house, the grass on either side of the sidewalks had sprinkler systems in it. So we keep that going. We tend for that grass. It's not ours, but we tend for it. We mow it, we fertilize it, we pay for the water bills. And we fully know that if it ever has to be dug up, that's okay. That's perfectly okay. So just wanted to say again, the idea, let it stand. If it's there, let it stay. And if you have to dig it up, that's fine. And then allow us to replace it if and when that ever does happen. Thank you for your time.
Hello, my name is Linda Buchanan. I live at 119 North Lord Street. I wasn't planning either to get up here, and I'm certainly not going to repeat because I agree with the fact that we all know that it's the city's right of way, and we know that that land is there for everybody's best interest. But I do think it's important for the ability to have it maintained, and I would ask that really what Bob and Hugh and so many have said is actually, that we're allowed to keep it looking nice. And if you need to tear it up, you tear it up. And then we can make it look nice again. I'm just going to give a short example. I'm not going to go into that because I agree wholeheartedly with them. But I do want to say that I'm really happy about the electrical project, and I'm really happy about, am I talking too close to it? Or, back in October, a big box went in, and, of course it had to go in. Of course it goes on the right of way. No concerns. That's what had to be done. In October, about 2 weeks before Halloween, I called the city department that, works and wanted to everyone works, and I love our employees, and I know they work really hard, but I wanted to make them aware of the fact that there was a huge dirt mound next to the big box, and it had metal coming out of it. In the daylight, you can see it, but little children were going to be trick-or-treating, and I was concerned that they could trip over it, something could happen. Let's face it, things could happen, and this was a safety issue. And, the woman that answered said, well, that's not your property. And I said, oh, I know it's not my property. I don't care really whose property it is. It's just, it's the city's property. I'm not really allowed to touch it, and I'm worried that somebody could get hurt. Well, anyway, it was kind of pushed off, and, for what other reason, I don't know, but it didn't happen, and nobody got hurt, so that's a good thing. But if it was on my property, I would have taken it up. I would not leave a big mound with metal in it sitting on my property. Now it's 5 months. And I keep thinking they're going to put that other box in, and that's why it's there. But the box isn't there. So this is not just a one-time. I've seen it other places, but, I do run a business there. My husband and I have a bed and breakfast. And do I think it looks great for the guests? No, but you know what? It's the city's property, and the city can do what they want. But my point in all this is, one, safety, that those rods should have been taken out of there. And, it only it will take like 4 or 5 wheelbarrows. And again, if it was our property, we would have done it, and just for safety reasons. But I guess my point is that if the city, and I think you guys will probably make the right decision, but if the city was to say, oh, nobody can do anything anymore, please be prepared to take care of things, to take care of the right-of-ways that no one's now not allowed to take care of, the right-of-ways that whether you have enough money to have someone cut your lawn or put whatever in it, or whether you're out there yourself, or whether, you have border collies chewing up your grass, whatever way you're taking care of it. And I think it's really important that the city recognize that they will need to do that, because when on Lord Street, just between like West and Moore Street, you can tell where there's a house there that, these folks don't live there full time, and they do whatever they can, but the right-of-way in front of their house, you can tell that they're not there to take care of it, because everything is cut around it, and that looks like, weeds and stuff. And in the city's defense, they're probably not used to going down that street because everybody takes care of the right-of-way down there. So they're not checking house by house to see who's not there. But anyway, I don't need to talk anymore. I think you get the point. I think it's really important that you prepare yourselves for that and be able to explain to the citizens how our efforts of beautification aren't needed anymore, because I think it's important. So anyway, thank you very much.
Is there anybody else over in this quadrant that wants to speak? Okay, switching sides over here. Go right ahead.
Paul Swenson, 107 North Atlantic Avenue. You know what I love about this town? I was just at my house and I was watching this meeting, streaming it. And I said to my wife, I want to go down there and say something. And you know what? I just walked down the block, came here, I didn't take a shower. And here I am. You know what else? I'll tell you a little funny story, as long as we got a little humor going. And that is, I moved here in 1990, came here. And at first, I wasn't living in sin with my wife. Well, she wasn't my wife at the time, or is my girlfriend. I was living down on Bay Street. And when I did go move in with her, I never went to the post office and got a change of address. And wouldn't you know, my mail started coming to her house the next day. That's what I love about this town. Anyway, so my first 4th of July here, I was walking around town, and what amazed me was there was all these people here, all these cars here, and they were parking all over the place, just parking all over the place on everybody's lawns and everything. And I was going, wow, man, people in Southport are really nice because they let people park on their lawns. And then it was explained to me that it wasn't their lawns, that was city property that they were parking on. So I was listening to everybody, what they were saying, and I think what everybody's doing in front of their homes, putting in these nice lawns and brick pavers and whatever else you do, I think it's a good thing. And I think planting trees and doing all that is a good thing, and making everything look more beautiful. And I don't have a dog in this fight, but there is one thing that jerks my chain, and that is when it comes to Easter weekend or Memorial weekend or 4th of July weekend, Labor Day weekend, all of a sudden, I'm not saying everybody, but there's certain people, 4th of July, will put up little American flags out in front of their lawn, which is actually city property, so people can't park there on their precious lawn. That's not right. That's not who we are. On these big weekends, we let people come into this town, and it's city property. You cannot claim it for your own personal property for these people when they come into town. And that's all I have to say. Other than that, I think you're doing a good job. Thank you. I'm going to go eat.
Hi, I'm Maria Horton. I live at 414 North Burrington Ave. And I want to say to the folks who've spoken already, thank you, thank you. I think I've been coming to Southport for 10 years, and I love the charm of the city. I've lived here since COVID 2020. And I think that if we did not allow the right-of-ways to be the way they are, or to have the houses on narrow streets exist a little in front of another, or have a gate or a mailbox out front in the right-of-way, it would not be the city of Southport. It would lose its charm. It would lose the things that when you walk around, you go, look at this house. And I'll use a couple examples. The folks on Short Street, I think they have the shark out by the yard. I love that. I've taken everyone who's come to visit to get their picture taken with the shark and the other statue in the road. So I'm here to encourage all of us to continue to make Southport unique. I think that's one of the best things that we can do. I also think that there should be recognition of the people who have voluntarily taken care of the right-of-way. The right-of-way in Southport is listed for salubrious breezes at either 98 or 99 feet. The minimum requirements for utilities is 50 feet under the North Carolina Department of Transportation. Brunswick County has a minimum 60-foot right-of-way. I think when we're looking at enforcement or we're looking at where these things are, we should be looking at how the city will grow in the future and how to compromise from 98 feet. Because even though we may have needed breezes in 1792, I don't know a lot of people who would give up their air conditioning for that breeze currently in Southport. I'm also a property owner with an alley that has been abandoned, and it has been abandoned long enough that there are very large trees that if someone on both sides of the alley tried to fix, would actually incur huge tree permit costs. And so if the city has not maintained those alleyways and do not have a plan for it, they should provide some courtesy or some discount or some consideration related to the maintenance. I've not heard a larger plan for the alleyways, but I know a number of them have been abandoned. They too can be as beautiful as our right-of-ways in the front yard, and I think that we need to find these happy compromises. I am probably an anti-authority complex person, but I don't think that a negative methodology will work. People have moved here to enjoy their property and their life. Most of us are retirement age, and we're encouraging young people, but we just want to enjoy our life, and that means less negativity, more positivity. So thank you very much for allowing us to speak.
Is there anybody else on this side? Go right ahead, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Amy Patterson. I live at 102 West Nash Street, and I guess I'll leave it with this. If you want to look if this code is enforced, what the future will look like, all you have to do is look at the past. We are right there on the corner of Nash Street and Howe by Spike's Dairy Bar, and we absolutely understand that that the right-of-way on our property, by our property, is not our property, to the extent that our bay window on Howe encroached into the right-of-way, and it could have grandfathered in, but we purposely chose to, at great expense, and bring that back and totally respect the right-of-way. But also part of that was that you look to the past, you saw that absolute eyesore when it was not taken care of for years and years and years and years and years. So if you want to enforce this code and not have it taken care of, you see that was, and that is right where everybody comes and goes. So obviously, the landscaping does not restrict somebody from walking onto it, because they do all the time. It's almost it's almost like I've seen people, like, rocks have disappeared because people think they're neat and they take them. So the bottom line is I understand, it is there, and same deal, we buried the power lines, et cetera. But please keep that in mind if you're asking this, if you do not expect us to take care of it, it will not be taken care of, even to the extent, and it is really funny, because we are right there in public parking. It is massive. We've actually had people come up and knock on our door and ask if it's okay to park in front of our house. And my answer is always, of course, it's public parking. The one lady even gave me, she gave me flowers for letting me park in front of her house. I'm like, no, it's public parking. And to the very same extent with that, in front of it, public parking all the time, it's a sand pit, it's dirt, it's mud. And I have asked the city to see if they can remediate that issue, and the response was, nope, no. So if that is, and I am sure nobody wants to hear, let's raise taxes so we can pay to do that. Nobody wants that. This is the most effective way to maintain a beautiful city without doing a tax burden across the whole entire city, and that it will not be maintained otherwise. So thank you for your time.
Is there anybody else on this side? I think we've captured everybody's comment. I want to thank you all again for coming here. We have another right-of-way meeting on March 11th at 6 p.m. It's here, correct? Yeah, it's in this building. This is not an easy topic. So I've jumped down to Mayor's comments, just so you know. The part of this issue is parking. And you heard tonight that there are some people who do put the little flags out or the cones out, or if you park there, they come out and they yell at you. I've been a victim of that myself. I parked to talk to a constituent, and the neighbor came out to yell at me because I was parking in his yard, and clearly I was not. But that's the minority. And once again, you don't take a sledgehammer to fix a little problem. We can address those specific issues with having somebody like the code enforcer go to them on the 4th of July and tell them, pick up your flags. So we can address that. There's an idea that was floated by me, and I don't know if it's a good idea, I don't know if it's a bad idea. But in some areas, because there's no one fix for any of this, at least not my mind, when we have the 99-foot thing, I noticed that when they were going to do the underground just on River Drive, the posts, they went and they did a survey, and they put the posts in so the people putting the cables down would understand where it was. And it was on people's front doors. I mean, it went way up their yards. And there are spots in the city where that is available. Do we still need that? Could we? Remember, this is not a mayor decision. This is a board decision. And it takes a lot more thought than just a conversation right now. Could we sell some of that land back to the landowner? And then they could have it. But remember, when we do that, we would go back to the county and increase your land size so your taxes would go up. Okay? So there's a give and a take on that. Is there some happy medium? How much land? Is it 60 feet for the county? Is it 55 feet for the state? Is it what is it? And does it fit every piece? Or do you have to specifically target it? I don't know how to answer all of those questions, but it's something that I'm going to be asking the manager to look into. How do we look at that? And that was not, I'd like to take claim for that, but that was not my idea. They bring up a great point. If you're not fixing it and keeping it up, then we would have to do that. And we have enough trouble now finding staff to be able to cut the parks and stuff. So that's a big issue. The issue of building a stone wall in the right-of-way. Just talking from Rich Hall. I know. Because if you're going to build a stone wall and I can't park there now because of your stone wall or your some fixed structure there, we might be able to have the stone wall if we sold some of the property to you, and you could build a wall on your new piece of property. But structures that are going to block people from parking when we need it, I think we'll have to, it's a delicate balance. I don't know where that balance is. And we have the everlasting issue of small towns, and not just Southport. We've had mayors, managers, building inspectors, not the current building inspectors, okay? All give permission to do things. And that's just a fact. And if the city has to recognize that those permissions were given, even though there was no documentation, people could be fibbing to you, but there's enough instances of those oral history to throw another wrinkle into the whole mess of how you do that. So we have to work on that. Where's the compromise in all of that? We have a whole meeting on alleyways. The alleyways came up because certain people were giving permission to do whatever they wanted to, and other people were not given permission to do whatever they wanted to. And the other people wanted to buy it, and they weren't allowed to buy it, but other people might have been able to buy it. We're not really sure. I'm hoping I'm going to learn. Not who and how it all happened, but encroachments took place. So the alleyways were there as a pedestrian way of moving pedestrians back and forth. That's what their original purpose was. So do we go back to do that again? Do we make it a bike path? What do we do with the alleyways? Something needs to be done with the alleyways. Whatever it is, we sell it to the landowners, we arm wrestle, we do something, but we do something with the alleyways, because leaving them abandoned is not, to me, the one person speaking, is not the right answer. So we have to kind of figure that out. But that's a separate, it's the same, but it's a separate issue. There's the alleyways, and then we have the right-of-ways. So this is going to be unfolding, and I'm assuming you're going to hear different opinions from the aldermen, which is exactly the way that the system is supposed to work. But it's not going to be resolved tonight. It will not be resolved on March 11th. We have to look at all of the good ideas that people bring into us, and then decide what is that best answer. And at the end of the day, I suspect that some people will be happy, and others may not be as happy. But we need to be as fair as we can to everybody, and including the landowners. And yes, I am one of those people who take great pride in our citizens for keeping up their property. I truly mean that. When I walk all these streets and stuff, and I look at what's happened to this town and turned it around in the past 25 years, it's pretty amazing what's taken place. So you got to weigh all of that. And with that, Alderman Mosteller, do you have any comments?
Yay, I'm glad to go first. Well, we're going to continue. We're having another meeting, so we're going to continue to hear from citizens, number one. We have a lot of challenges, as y'all know. Obviously, a lot of the landscaping that y'all are talking about is nice and enhances that area. It's really difficult. For one, I just want to be on the record that I'm not about selling any of the city's land right away. I just want to say that up front, because it was platted in 1792 as part of our historic character to have these city-owned right-of-ways. I would struggle mightily to change that. I struggle with hardened structures. I'll just tell you, y'all want to know what my opinion is about it. I struggle with hardened structures. Landscape versus hardened structures, I think, are two different conversations. The big problem is how do we be fair? I live on North Atlantic. So my whole front of our block is all parking, right? It's utilized for parking, all the right-of-way. And I could easily spend the money and landscape it all up and not have parking there. So I would effectively do the same thing as putting little flags out that way. So there's a lot of what do we do here kind of things, because there's a lot of diversity of situations. I know over on West where Susan is, you know, people don't usually park there unless we're having big overflow, you know, unless we're having those things like Paul talked about. So I don't know if we do like Rich said and do some kind of zones that maybe, but to just not have ordinance and just say everybody can maintain and do without some kind of plan, I don't know how we have any control over anything. I appreciate you might have good taste, but somebody else might not. And how do we control the plantings? And so anyway, so to me, it's a large, very large conversation. And again, but one thing I'm pretty clear on is hardened structures, fences, big boulders, things that restrict and create hazard to me.
I'm going to dumb it down a little bit from my perspective. I live on East Nash Street, and the Methodist Church is right near me. Those people are some of my favorites, except for Sundays and holy days. But we all, you know, get that, and we moved here knowing that. When Miss Delaney was talking, and I absolutely love her home, I love that portion of town, I thought about, what is this really about? And some people take, and some people create. And what the Delaney's have done, what the Cabrals have done, what our friends over there on West Nash have done, the Buchanases, Fosberries, and so many other people around town have created. They've created space that the people of Southport can enjoy. And that's different, in my opinion, than someone who fences just as much land that is not owned by them as they own. And there's a great example of that right here on East Bay. So take or create. You can take for your own enjoyment, or you can create for the better good. That's part of the question that I think we have to address. And then separate from that is I heard comments about not enforcing an ordinance, and we're faced with that all the time. People come to us and ask us to not enforce our tree ordinance and to give them back money knowing that going into it they were going to be fined. So I'm not big on not enforcing, but I am big on amending and making an ordinance that fits better what we're trying to accomplish. So amend or enforce, I'm leaning towards amend. And I do appreciate everything that y'all have done to make Southport what it is.
Alderman Davis.
I heard a lot of good stuff tonight. I particularly like Mr. Fosberry's remark about it's not necessary to use a bulldozer when a little shovel could work, perhaps. I have a question for you. Did you say you were here with your lucky wife or your lovely wife? I want to clear that up. Yes, she's lucky, but she's lovely. Oh, his bride. Okay. Back to the topic at hand. I know someone, and it's not Alderman Carroll, who says that he doesn't go to church on Sunday because he doesn't dare give up his parking place. He lives near where both, the Episcopalians, the Baptists, and the Methodists like to park in his area. Like I said, it's not you. I know you go to church. But that does speak to the value of parking in the rights of way, and we have to be sensitive to that. One of the things that came up pretty early when I in my first year or so as an alderman, was an issue with two different pieces of property, both of which have been referenced tonight. Both of them are blocking public access and parking to city parks. And in both cases, the owners of the property are well aware and have done it anyway. So that's one of the things that has drawn our attention to what are we going to do about enforcing right-of-way? And we have to be sensitive from a legal standpoint of not selectively enforcing. And so, as you said, I mean, we have to look for ways to amend the ordinance that allow us to deal with the different issues that are very individual to that piece of property, but at the same time achieve the overall goal of a beautiful city, but public access to public property. Thank you, Mr. Fosbury.
Alderman Kelly.
I don't need to speak just to hear myself speak. I will say I appreciate the comments of the other board members, and I certainly am leaning towards the amend rather than the enforce in most cases, I would say. There are some possible issues that need to be addressed sort of on a more one-on-one basis. I did just want to mention Paul Swenson's flag comment. I have driven around in circles over the 4th of July over many, many years looking for a place to park. And I actually knew I could just move that flag and be able to park in that space, and I didn't do it. So it is something that we as a larger group need to allow for the bigger holidays, and really realizing that, yes, if you're okay with the city digging up your property, you gotta also be okay with people parking in your property also. So that's, or your perceived property, I guess I should say. So I'll leave it at that.
Alderman Spencer.
Yes, sir, thank you. I think you get the prize today for reference. I parked in your side yard on your gravel, and I noticed it was very pretty, very nice. And I think I'm closing on something tomorrow, and I'm hoping to get some gravel in my side yard tomorrow, the next day, before we change this amendment. So, I've noticed some things. Okay, I grew up in Southport. Things have changed. Yeah, y'all made it really pretty. It really is nice. We used to have shrimp boats and things being built in your neighborhoods. We don't allow that anymore. So we really don't protect property rights. It's just nice property rights is what we protect. So I want to just say that they've changed my way of life forever. So I want you to understand that some of these changes are not all great, and pretty is only, I don't know, top layer deep. If you've noticed, nobody showed up here that lives on the other side of Bonnets Creek. You didn't have a single person speak that lives on the other side where I live. It's a whole different situation. We don't have the tourist. So I'm learning that Southport is not all the same. We have a lot of different interests. And to make one cookie cutter law, one thing I have noticed in my lifetime in Southport is the new folks like to regulate like no other. It's like they haven't found an issue they didn't like to regulate. Control my trees, control my dogs, control everything. So this is what I've seen in my lifetime. There are state setbacks on Moore Street. My front porch is on the setback line. I can't put anything in the front yard. So I have to live with the state laws. That is Moore Street, House Street, Leonard. So we have different laws regulating different locations. It's a very complicated situation. Alleyways, we need to deal with the alleyways. The trees have grown so big, you would get a $10,000, $20,000 fine to cut them in our right-of-way. So we haven't been taking care of them. We haven't dealt with them. Sooner or later, somebody's got to deal with things. So that's, as a local, I sort of feel like sooner or later, we're gonna have to deal with some things, I guess. So I'm not big on the regulation, but we're gonna have to talk through this. Just because you didn't hear them talk here tonight doesn't mean there's not another side. Everybody doesn't show up to these meetings. Everybody's not brave enough to stand up at that podium. And most of the time, those are the people I hear from. So we're gonna explore, we're gonna listen, we're gonna see what we can come up with. I appreciate all your time.
Alderman-elect.
You know, you put an awful lot on our plate here. We've got a lot to think about, and it's certainly not going to be resolved in one conversation. There's some complex issues, and I appreciate everything everyone has done to beautify their property. I, like Alderman Mosselt, have a problem with brick walls and whatnot. That's a safety issue. I put on my old risk management hat, and that can get in your way. But still, there may be a way to get around that as well. Parking, as you know, in our town is a premium. A couple of months ago, I pulled down onto a place. I whipped into a parking place, and there was said reserved for this business. And I went, this is public parking. And the owner of the store came out and started having some conversation with me. The only thing she did not do was threaten to turn the poodle loose on me. But so I said, I'm parking here, thank you very much, goodbye. But we've got some issues here. We need to think this, we need to think it through. We need to do what's fair for the citizens of Southport and the city of Southport. And that's about as simple as you can get.
City Manager, do you have any last words?
I do not. You know, the staff's taking it just like everybody else is so that we can come back to the board and offer different options and the pros and cons. So please spread the word about the March 11th workshop we're going to be having. Not to say you have to come back again, but if you could get others, the board really does want to hear from as many people as we possibly can. So
6 p.m.
And ideas about how we can deal with competing priorities.
All right. Thank you very much for coming. It's really been a pleasure, and I mean that sincerely, and I look forward to more input. Sure. Could you go to the microphone, though? That's the only requirement.
Hi, sorry. I'm Kim Cobb. I live at 107 North Lord Street, and I live adjacent to the Fosberries and their nice little gravel parking pad, and we graveled our side as well. My question is, why are we so worried about the visitors parking and not be worried about the residents? Just to say that when I bought at 107 North Lord Street, I had no idea the parking issue that would happen in front of my house. And especially President's Weekend, couldn't find a place to park. Luckily, I have beautiful neighbors who allow me to park in their driveways, but there are lots of times where I can't park in front of my house. So the fact that I do pay taxes, don't have a driveway, I knew that going in, didn't know there was a problem, but I just want to ask you, while we are so focused on visitors, love the visitors, and we're not as focused about the residents. So just could you keep that in mind when you're thinking about that as well, please? Thank you.
All right. And take a motion to adjourn. I'm sorry. I keep forgetting that one. All in favor? Done.